Let's see if you can come in. Peace, brother. Everyone, it's your brother Tavon Swano, aka the Naturalist, aka the Orthodox Moor. And wait for my brother Sergeant Demoted to come in. Hold on real quick. I'm gonna adjust my lights real quick. Add. Should be coming in any second now.
All right, there we go.
Peace.
Can you hear me?
Peace.
Okay. Peace, oh man, my shit. No. Let me try something different then. I'm trying to work on my audio. I wish I had my other speaker, but let me
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
All right, that's good. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Let me turn my speaker down now. All right. All right. Well, the reason why I took so long, I had to look over everything from the 2 videos you give me, and write down the notes of the questions I had, because it was questions that came up as I watched it, and I kind of got them bubbled out, and I was, let's see, started, and I think we already had the plagiarism conversation. We had that conversation, correct?
Yeah. Real quick, just break down the build for everybody who's watching real quick.
Okay. And so initially we were building on the debate going on in reference to young Pharaoh having a debate with the Nation of Islam, and then the same process. I don't know how they combined it, but at some point in time they also addressed the Moorish Science Temple, and we were discussing the right for them to question things, so that we both agreed that they have the right to question, but I think we felt like it's all in the way you question, and then you got to make sure that your facts are correct. And so now we building on some of those facts, or lack thereof, depending on what it is.
Right. And in the previous bill we did, I made the point that since young Pharaoh is younger than me, I don't feel that it's proper for me to correct him. It's more proper for me to try to go speak to his teachers or add his teachers, etc. Right. And in this situation, you have Seti leading the way on it, and he's the mentor in the situation. So he's of my generation, a little bit older, so I feel like it's quite all right for me to go with Seti and whatnot. So I'm not necessarily like trying to come at him as a combatant. However, this is all about trying to make sure the information is correct for the family listening in and watching it, and just trying to just gain understanding.
Right, and you actually have that that understanding because that's your school of thought.
Yes, I came
more science.
Yeah, I came up in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'm no longer in the temple. I'm not a card member. I'm not a sheik. I'm not none of that type of stuff, right? But however, I know enough about it to clear up some confusion and whatnot on a very basic and just real clear level.
And that's real quick before we get. I just wanted to clarify that that's my that's going to be my I guess role in this conversation. Is I also have questions, just in general, because I'm curious about knowledge. But when I saw the debate and the argument, I wanted some things clarified to see, like, oh, is that true? That sounds a little off, all that stuff. And I figured you were the best person to clarify that for me. So
sure.
So if anybody listening, just let them know. I'm just letting everybody know that I don't know one way or the other, because I'm not versed enough in the science of the Moorish Science Temple or the Nation of Islam to really speak on it. So I'm here to learn.
Right, and to be clear for the family, I'm not giving a defense for the temple. I don't have a dog in the fight in this, right?
You want to address a specific thing.
Say what?
You're going to address just specific things that were discussed, correct?
Yeah, and a couple.
Like you're not here to defend the temple as a whole, right?
Right. I'm here just to clarify information and whatnot. That's all.
True indeed.
And to let everybody know that there's when you examine the information, there's really no reason for any schools of thought to be beefing.
Right. Oh, I guess that's what we should also say, that is our universal goal here, is to unify these schools of thought. So we both agree. That's something we both agreed on too. That there is a commonality and a connection.
Right. Not merge the schools of thought, but be able to have a unified understanding of what's common between the schools of thought. You see what I'm saying?
Perfect.
And be able to move forward based upon those common understandings, and be able to respectfully disagree where there is a disagreement and whatnot. So there is no.
Right.
So what we're talking about, if you look at our last build, Seti and Pharaoh are coming at their. Well, Pharaoh was asking questions, right? Seti is what he's called banging on people, right? So there's an antagonism in how they're doing it, right? That's causing division and whatnot. And so we're trying to unify things in terms of understanding ourselves as a people in this Pan-African diaspora. You know what I'm saying? And so we don't find it helpful to come at each other with that antagonism when we're all really in the same struggle, trying to figure out the same issues together. And at the end of the day, when any of us really want to address these issues, we're going to need each other collectively to come together in some way, shape, or form to address the issues. So we're trying to build an understanding of common culture and understanding, so we can go between the different groups and not have division and not have friction, have understanding and clarity.
True indeed. Yeah. And we did discuss plagiarism, though, right?
On the previous one,
last time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah.
And so I did just revisit that, and I think that was the biggest beef. I mean, not biggest beef, but the easiest thing to clarify. You know what I'm saying? There are different perspectives here. They both understand what plagiarism is, but there is also sometimes I don't know what term it is, but it's not the actual dictionary definition, but it is a definition that everybody uses. Mm-hmm. A cultural definition, I guess, is what I would call it. So I think probably Seti and a young Pharaoh was using a cultural definition of assuming that if you have similar information that somebody else does, and they wrote that information or it was in their book beforehand, then that's plagiarism. Mm-hmm. But the true definition of plagiarism is that you copy that information and you are taking ownership of that information when you did not originally author the information.
Right.
And by the words where they said divinely, what was it?
Divinely prepared.
Divinely prepared. That doesn't speak to what they are saying as if he is taking ownership of the words.
Right. And beyond that, he doesn't make the claim that he came up with anything. He says that he received the information from Muslims from India, Egypt, and Palestine. Right.
Right.
So he right off the top, there is no claim of authorship. There's claim of receiving something and divinely preparing something.
Mm-hmm.
So right off the top, the claim of plagiarism it doesn't work on its face because it's not a direct apples and apples situation.
Right. So the next question after that I had that was right in the line with the build that the Morse brother had. What's his name again? Because I'm gonna get it.
Or another one.
Right, the one that you sent the video of. So the next question he was answering or dealing with in reference to clarifying information for young Pharaoh was the perspective of the Moors and how important it is in the Moor Science Temple to not claim yourself as black. Mm-hmm. And I think both of them talked about that in some way. Young Pharaoh talked about it, but when I heard Seti's build, because that's the other thing that took me a while, I actually went to watch his build since I know that would be in your build. So I wanted to definitely have something to feed off of that. But he was saying, that it's taken away from the African perspective. Now, real quick, my perspective with limited knowledge about it is that it's a word. I understand that black is not necessarily a nationality or anything like that. And I think people identify with it because of the color, although that's not our real color. I don't think it's a bad thing, because he also unborn the understanding from one of in the lessons where it talked about black being associated with death and white being associated with heaven and all that. So you know that perspective of black and white and the racist racial tones within that came into play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feed into that because, you know, everybody sees things different. I've heard scriptures and places where black is considered something positive too. But what's your understanding on that? Like, why is that important for the more through the more science teachings to, you know, not say that? And I think that, if I'm understanding, that associates with claiming a nationality.
Right. So that's a really big topic. Black, according to science, means death, right? Um, so first and foremost, the first thing we have to establish is that black is a modern word and was never used in any ancient language for people to describe themselves. Um, you can see people talk about the word Kemet and all this other type of stuff, but that word does not mean black, right? Kemet does not mean black. Kemet means dark, right? Like or darkness, right? Like so, people try to say like Osiris is the Lord of the perfect black. It doesn't say Lord of the perfect black, right? There's the whole other word. Black is a modern word that comes out of English, etc., right? That has a very particular meaning to it. However, when we get into legal aspects of stuff, right, and this is what it comes down to, right, is Noble Drew Ali specifically taught that you were not that his followers were not to use names that alluded to slavery, and so he also taught that his teachings were for his people to become better citizens of America, and so based upon that, there you have to understand the concept of naturalization law and citizenship in this country. It's a very, very, very deep and long history and whatnot. But bottom line is there's tiers of citizenship in this country. There's a top level tier. There's a second level tier, and then there's things that are below that, right? That aren't really a citizen. So you hear the term second class citizen all the time, and people don't actually understand that that's actually a legal codification. There is a secondary level to that, right? Right. And so legally there's the term for this hierarchy is the top level of it is free white person. The second level of it is black person, and then there's different levels underneath that. For instance, like people who are subjects to the country, or for instance, like people who are subject to the country but can't vote in the country. People here on visa, etc. Also people in jail, right? So the assumption is that black has to do with skin tone and white has to do with skin tone, and ironically, that's not the case. In the legal definition of free white person, it actually states via the constitutional law, and you can look this up in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, Bouvier's Law Dictionary, under white person, and it'll break down the fact that it doesn't have anything to do with skin color, right? And bottom line, a free white person just means that you're a citizen. And so you can this is codified in law in 1790 in the Naturalization Act of 1790, the very first one. It was also the year of the very first census of America, right? The first enumeration of the people, right? And you can see when it comes into the how the census is supposed to be taken or how it was originally taken. You had free persons, you had slaves, and then you had the Native Americans, right? So you had the free persons, you had and there were two levels of free persons, right? There were free whites and there were free blacks. And the difference between the two, and you have to understand this, is the free whites could vote and the free blacks could not. The free whites, the concept of being free and white means that you enjoy the top level of citizenship. You can vote in federal elections and you can rise as high as being the president, right? If you're not a free person, you can't become president of the country. It stipulates that in the Constitution that the president has to be a natural born citizen, and it states in that Naturalization Act of 1790 that a natural born citizen is basically the equivalent of a free white person.
Right.
Mhm. And so a lot of people think again that that free white person only deals with people of European descent. However, from the very first census, it applied to African people as well. Um, and it still does to this day. If you look at Federal Directive 15, it stipulates that white when you look at it is anybody who has origin in any of the original races of North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Right, and I'm gonna say that one more time, real slow. Anybody who has origin in any of the original people of North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. And we already know that right off the top that the original people in all those situations uh, were Afro-Asiatic people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's yeah, we had that conversation before because when you were talking about it, when we think of the brother who is black in skin tone, or at least we would assume by his look, and him fighting for what was he fighting to be? He wasn't fighting to be black. He was fighting to be classified
No,
as
he
what
was
though?
fighting to be black.
He's fighting.
So brother
Okay.
Mustafa Hefni. Everybody go look up this brother Mustafa Hefni. He is an Egyptian. He's my color. He looked like he could be my father, my uncle, my something, right? Like he looked straight African American. Like he looked like everybody. He looked like he got like everyone had an uncle that looked like Mustafa Hefni, real talk, or a cousin or something, right? Um, he by law he's Egyptian, right? So by law he has to be classified since Egypt's in North Africa, right? By law he has to be classified as white, and he's been in America for decades and has been classified as white. When he came over here, he got in touch with like the conscious community in a sense, right? And during like the Dr. Clark era, etc. And so he started to identifying as self-identifying as a Nubian, right? And so after a while, he wanted to be able to be identified as a black Nubian. So he tried to do this, but the government wouldn't let him do so. They're like, no, 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 no. Legally, you have to classify yourself as white. That's just what the law is. And so he sued the government. He went to the UN, a whole bunch of stuff. He finally went and got a whole bunch of people to sign a petition and whatnot to try to get it to where he could do so, right? Um, and I don't know if he was successful or not. He's never been able to put anything other than white on any legal status that he's ever had. But for the first time ever in 2020 on the census, you can be from North Africa and actually personally identify as being black. It can go both ways though, right? You can personally identify as being white and personally identify as being black. Now, see, this is the point that Drew Ali was trying to make, right? So a lot of people try to use this rhetoric of black according to science means death to mean to mean that Noble Drew Ali was anti-African. He was extremely pro-African. He was all about identifying as African. He said, no, we descend from the inhabitants of Africa, right? That's us, right? He was like, but bottom line is he was explaining that anybody who wants to be a citizen in this country has to identify themselves from a national standpoint. He broke down the fact that if you naturalize in this country, anybody who's not native, for instance, go find anybody from West Africa, like Nigeria, or anybody that you know from East Africa, whatever, right? Like or North, wherever.
We don't want to be
You go holler at them real quick because when they fill out the citizenship paperwork and the naturalization paperwork, it asks them, what nation do you come from, right? You have to denote that. You cannot become a citizen without ever saying that. You have to denote a nation, right? And so what we need to understand is that we were never made citizens of this country, right? A lot of people think that we were, and one of the things that Noble Drew Ali explained to people was that the 14th and 15th Amendment were not passed for our salvation as citizens, right? What they were passed for was to bring the North and the South that had just been in a civil war, right? They had split apart, right? They were making everybody who was native born and previously a citizen, etc., right? And ripped apart from the country. They brought them back together, right? And also what it did was it allowed the country to extend naturalization to people who were not free white persons. This is where they codified the second tier class of citizenship. Before then, you could only be a free white person to be a citizen. Okay. But once they freed the slaves, they tried to give us a solid and be like, okay, we'll make it to where you can naturalize, you know what I'm saying, and become citizens, even at a second tier status. We'll still try to help you out with that, right? but we never understand. There's never a point in history, like, so there was a Naturalization Act of 1870 that allowed it to where the descendants of the slaves could naturalize as citizens, right? Um, However, no one can show me where there was ever a mass naturalization of African descent people who were descendants of slaves in this country. So, like, everyone understands the concept of Ellis Island, where all the immigrants had to go through Ellis Island and naturalize and all that type of stuff, right? There's no point.
Right.
There's no African Ellis Island. You know what I'm saying? There's no
Right.
point in time where you can
Right.
point to this that we all went through this naturalization process, because the federal government doesn't have the power to magically wave a wand and say, "Oh, you're all citizens now," right? That's why they had to pass the Naturalization Act, right? But so check this out: we never actually naturalized and became citizens, right? We became refugees, right? If you look at the Freedmen's Bureau, it's called the Freedmen's Bureau of Land and Refugees. The Freedmen's Bureau of Land and Refugees, right? We became refugees. We were not made citizens, right? So the process was for us to become citizens, and second class at that, right? The way they set it up, or the way it was set up in that secondary point, right? I hate saying they, right? But again, we never chose to embrace that. Now the truth is, people of African descent had been citizens of this country since the very first census in 1790, right? You can see this. You can see this with a brother named Abdul Rahman Ibrahim Ibn Saudi, right? He was a West African prince who was taken into slavery in the 1800s, right? And he was released based upon a treaty that was had with the North Africans, the Moors, the Moroccans. They had an understanding to where they wouldn't be so they wouldn't be seen as black persons via the law, and treated as slaves as such, right? Because they had a treaty of peace and friendship that allowed them to trade back and forth and also dwell amongst each other, right? And so they basically had when the Moors were over here, they were seen as like citizens. You know what I'm saying? To where they had to be dealt with via the law. So if they broke a law, you take them to court, etc. Right? You can't treat them like a slave because they're African, right? And again, like the Moors were as dark as my brother Sergeant Debug and as light as me. You know what I'm saying? Like they were African people for sure. You see what I'm saying? And so, bottom line is, this brother got taken into slavery. Part of the treaty was if you ran into a Moor and he was a slave, basically you had to set him free, basically, right? And so,
yeah, let him go.
Right. So basically, when the brother came over, his master noticed that the slaves were treating him different, like they were treating him with severe respect, right? Like he was royalty. And they found he can speak Arabic. He was like, oh snap, he must be a Moor. So this treaty was signed in 1786, 1787, right? And in 1790 there was something called the Free Sundry Moors Act in the state of South Carolina that was passed. It's basically a proclamation letting people understand, hey, we have a treaty with the Moors, right? So make sure you don't enslave any Moors, right? Because you'll get us all messed up via this treaty. So be careful. So when you run into one, be easy, because you will get us messed up with the Sultan over there in Morocco, and that's not cool. We have a treaty with this guy, right? And so people were actually released via that concept after 1790 in South Carolina, and went back on that as well, right? But in another case, the case I'm talking about right now, the brother Abdul Rahman Ibrahim Ibn Sari, he was seen to have speak Arabic, be treated differently by the slaves, and so his master got in touch with the government, was like, hey man, I think I got one of those more people on my hands, right? You know what I'm saying? So they get in contact with the Moroccan consulate. You know what I'm saying? And the Moroccan consulate says, do you want to identify as a Moor, rock out as a Moor? He's like, of course. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? And so he gets sent through the Moroccan consulate. He gets sent back to Liberia. So So this is not Morocco he gets sent back to. Liberia is in the Gambia. So Liberia is proper sub-Saharan Africa. You feel me? He's from sub-Saharan Africa, right? He's from Guinea himself, right? And so he goes back to the Gambia, like where his home is at. You know what I'm saying? Like Liberia is at the beginning of the Gambia. So he goes back home to sub-Saharan Africa as a Moor. You know what I'm saying? This is documentable, right? I'll put all the links down in the description and whatnot for all this stuff, right? But so via the law, he wasn't treated as a black person. Otherwise, he would have stayed a slave, right? They had to treat him as a white person via the treaty, etc., and give him certain legal rights in the court, standing in the court, all that type of stuff. And food, bada bing, bada bang, bada boom, he gets to go home, right? But here's the deal, right? We didn't classify. We chose not to classify ourselves as Moors, right? We chose.
Now, when you say did people actually turn down the choice to classify, or was it something that we just wasn't aware of and never took the opportunity?
It's a voluntary thing. So it's not like the government was in any position to have to like. They didn't ask, do you want to classify as a Moor or not? They're like, nah. What they made for us? They saw that we naturally weren't doing it, right? And so they made for us a whole second tier class of citizenship. You feel me? Like that's they codified the concept of a black person legally as something other than a slave, but like more like a citizen type person in 1870 with that Naturalization Act where they extended to. So again, slavery ends in 1865. Okay, they passed the 14th and the 15th Amendment in I believe 1866, 67ish type stuff. There's some civil rights that are trying to get passed in the 60s and whatnot. But 1870s, where they recognize, okay, we have to try to extend citizenship to these people because they're not doing it the way that's already set out there. Because we could have all in 1865 said we were free white persons as Moors, right? We could have done that, right? And been straight from then on, right? And never had an issue. There would have been no Jim Crow. No, none of that, right? And understand, Jim Crow was going on during the time of Prophet Noble Ali, right? People were getting lynched for attempting to vote during the time of Prophet Noble Ali. Not a single solitary Moor got dealt with that way or got dealt with harshly for attempting to vote. And they were able to actually put in the first African descent person into Congress since Reconstruction, right? Put them into wrap reminder right there. The first African descent person put into Congress was done so by the Moors, right? Since Reconstruction.
Where?
The first time since Reconstruction.
With us.
In Chicago, in Illinois. His name was hold on, give me 2 seconds. It's eluding me real quick. I can see his face and I can't remember his name. I can see his face and I can't remember his name. Give me 2 seconds, fam.
Take time.
Feel free to ask me another question in the meantime if you want to.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is still within the same topic. Anyway. So I heard the last time we built, and I was asked you about the brother who was going. He even talked to Dr. Umar about his nationality. So this perspective of recognizing as Moors it seems like the more scientific was saying, okay, this is an opportunity for us to unify and connect around a nationality, which will give us some sort of power, right? I'm feeling.
Yes.
And with that understanding, as just playing devil's advocate, because at first this is probably exactly how I felt, but speaking to you, I do understand the perspective that it can give us power in a legal sense in this country because this is how they run things.
Mm-hmm.
But devil's advocate, somebody's going to say, well, they're still not going to care. And, they still going to treat us the same. You know what I'm saying? Do that play like, and I hear that story that you're telling me now that, during the time of Jim Crow,
mm-hmm.
that would be something that would prevent you from being treated in that way. But wouldn't it more or less be a situation depending on the person you ran into, correct?
How do you mean?
Like if you was down south and a bunch of redneck motherfucking racist white motherfuckers catch you, they not gonna give a damn that you say you were Moor. If they're gonna lynch you, they're gonna lynch you anyway.
Okay, that's fine.
That's That's what I'm saying. Like that's
here's the question. Did that happen?
No, not that I know.
All right.
I couldn't. No.
Question. Why?
And you just said it didn't.
Yeah. Here's the question. Yeah. Why didn't it happen? So we all know about Emmett Till, right? Similar time period, right?
Right.
We all know about it, right? So
right, we know.
Under the law, he didn't have the. So we know that we know the concept of under the. Oh, by the way, the congressman's name was Oscar D. Priest.
Oscar who?
Oscar Stanton D. Priest.
Okay. Oscar Stanton D.
Priest.
Priest.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Priest.
Illinois' first district from March 4th, 1929 to January 3rd, 1935. Mm-hmm. Born in Florence, Alabama, right?
And he was the first black congressman of throughout the United States
since Reconstruction, since the time period of when we were freed of slaves. Because at one point in time, under that whole second-tier class of citizenship, we took over the state legislatures in the South, right? But we were taken down by gunpoint, right? The KKK removed us from all that type of stuff, right? But here's the deal, right? Why were they able to forcibly remove us and do all this kind of stuff like pass Jim Crow laws, right? Because we were the second tier of citizenship, not the top tier. So we couldn't get remedy above the top tier. Now, what the Prophet was saying, or Prophet Noble Ali was saying, was when you make yourself a full citizen, you're now top tier. You're equal with these people in terms of the eyes of the law, right? In terms of the standing that you have, you can get the same type of remedy and whatnot, right? Like so we all understand the Dred Scott case was talking about that a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. Now, again, we all hear that and we assume that means skin color, right? But understand something. Right. That case happened after the brother I was telling you about was sent back to Africa. So Dred Scott, that case happened after the Moorish brother was enslaved, released to the Moorish consulate, and sent back to Africa as a free white person and an African, no less African. No, again, that's the point. People want to make it sound like identifying as a free white person makes you less African. No, it doesn't, right? It makes you an African. It makes you an African that's able to be the top tier citizen in this country, right? Now, the first concept of the free. Listen here, the free black person concept goes back to the Moors that were coming over here and other indentured servants that were not slaves, right? Because there were African descent people over here who were never slaves. People don't even understand that. There was African descent people over here who were never slaves, but indentured servants, right? And all that type of stuff. And even owned slaves and all that type of stuff, right? Know that, right? Like they were owned as slaves, right? But there was this term free black person. You had almost all the rights as a free white person, but you could not vote in the federal elections. You feel me?
So as a Moorish Science Temple brother, what would you put when asked that question to check a box for race, or would that matter, or do you only check the box when it says nationality?
So when I was part of the temple, I checked white person.
White person, okay, all right.
And just for clarity, I still check white person, right?
Okay.
Now understand.
Understand. Ironically, I thought about doing that out of spite and just to be funny, not understanding the science and the knowledge of what you just broke down years ago. Yeah, I thought of doing that. Just
check this out
of that.
Instantaneously, in one census, we could eradicate racism. If we all just did that, if we so right now we're in the age of the white identitarians and the white ethno-nationalists and the white nationalists, right? So imagine if we all just said no, but we're all free white people, right?
yeah, that would blow their fucking their whole. They would have to re-strategize.
Done. They would implode mentally. Yeah. They couldn't even handle it. You know, because you know what they would have to recognize. See, here's the problem with all that, right? Like so the ethno-nationalists and the white nationalists, they've been in this country long enough, as long as we have, long enough to not know who they are anymore. They don't know that they're Irish or they're German or they're Italian or they're whatever, right? They've been here long. Like I don't know about history. I'm just white. They just know that they're white. Mm-hmm. I'm free white and 21. You ever heard that phrase, free white 21? That means that you're another country. That's all it means. That's all it means. Mm-hmm. Again, Mustafa Hefner, right? African brother. He looks like an African American, right? He is a white person via the law right now.
Yeah. So, and that's still, they still use this premise in the law. So that is the actual law
Mm-hmm.
to date.
Yeah, Federal Directive
Right.
15.
And,
Yeah, when the census comes out.
and that's, so that's confirmable. That's a fact thing that can easily, people can go out and confirm, right? To look that up. Do you know where they would find that information?
Federal
I want to
Directive
look that up.
15 is the federal law that breaks down the classifications of what's on federal paperwork, right, and the census, right. So again, you'll have white, you'll have black, you'll have Asian Pacific Islander, etc. You feel what I'm saying? You'll have the Native American classifications, etc. Right.
Hispanic, non-black,
Right,
and stuff like that.
yeah, and then watch you'll Hispanic
Right.
hits an interesting thing, right? You're either white Hispanic or you're non-white Hispanic. They play
Right,
with you on
right,
that one, right?
and that was peculiar too. That was a weird one too. That kind of, because that was new. That's new, right? Right? Because I didn't see that when I was younger.
Right,
I don't remember. I
right,
remember this being
exactly.
Hispanic.
You got it.
Okay. And I just remember recent years seeing like, well, what does that mean? You know, and some places will do that first. They will ask you that, you know, because sometimes it'll come up not as a whole collection of boxes to check. They will ask you specific questions, and then you have to answer that to go to the next part. And I see it come up like that. They'll ask you first, are you Hispanic?
Mm-hmm.
And then you say yes or no. And if you say yes, they'll ask you, are you Hispanic, black, or white? And then they'll go from there. But if you say no, then it'll go to other options.
Right.
Right. Now, so okay, I get it, and you know what? But I still always felt like, say for me, when I heard the More Science brother building to give this information to young Pharaoh, he impressed upon how important it is. I get the how it can be beneficial, but it sounded like he spoke as if this is the only solution for us to all identify as Moors, and he also spoke as if it. And I'm reinterpreting what I heard. I'm not saying he specifically said these things, but from what he was saying, it sounded like he was also saying that we are all Moors, which speaks to the perspective, which also in that we are not black, we are Moors when they were discussing that. So when the Moor Science people break down, they understand that we are not black, but we are Moors. Do that mean that all of us who are black in America are descendant of Moors, or is it just saying that we should all connect to that because of the landmass and where we possibly came from as slaves, or something different that I'm missing?
So the Moorish Science Temple of America definitely teaches that the names of Negro, black, and colored, in terms of how they were applied to people of African descent, were put on people who were Moors of Moorish descent, right? And they break down the fact that the old Moroccan Empire extended from like northwest Africa to southwest Africa, across to the Americas and the adjoining islands and whatnot. And so everybody can, like, so nationality is a very interesting thing, right? You are what your forefathers are, right? So no matter what, at one point in time, we all come from a spot that was underneath the Moroccan Empire. Like the people who went through the slave trade and whatnot, right? So whether you come from North Africa or you come from the sub-Saharan West Africa, right? Like again, I just explained to you the brother who went back from on the whole treaty concept. He was from sub-Saharan Africa. He wasn't from North Africa, right? So he was still able to claim being Moorish, right?
Right.
So he understood the historical aspects, the historical aspect of the all that type of stuff, right? The identity aspect of it, right? When it says when it says that we're Moorish, right? It's talking about the empire that we belonged to, right? The empire that we belong to, and an empire is made up of many different nations and many different tribes. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So the concept of being a Moor is not one overarching, just one specific thing, right? So when Noble Drew Ali even broke it down, he said that the Moroccan Empire was first established by the Moabites, right? But then at a certain point in time, different people from Asia came over, right? He talked about the Amorites. He talked about the Hittites. He talked about the Canaanites, and he talked about the Hammatites. Um, these people represent a large swath of people. For instance, the Hammatites are something he taught were the ancestral people of the Egyptians, for instance, right? So you can look over here and see the fact that there's Egyptian artifacts in the Americas all day, right? You can see the fact that
Right.
there's Canaanite and Phoenician artifacts over in America. You can see the fact that there's Arabic artifacts in America, that there's Hebrew artifacts in America. You know what I'm saying? So the five groups that he broke down break down all the artifacts you can like. They break down that they go back to like all the people you can basically find here already, right? Um, and so you can be Egyptian and be a Moor, right? You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not that you have to give up being Egyptian to be Moor. You can be Kemetic and be a Moor. You don't have to stop that, right? Um,
Right.
and I'll get into that in a little bit. Like the Noble Drew Ali was not anti-Egyptian, right? When you listen to Seti talk, right? There's right off the top, you're going to get this kind of sense that because Seti is anti the temple, that the temple was anti-Kemetic stuff, right? And nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. They were extremely pro-African, right? So I just want to clarify that. Yeah, so again, being Moorish doesn't mean that you're not Egyptian or you're not Mandinka or you're not Yoruba or you're not whatever your tribe is or whatever, right? The Moorish aspect is the name of the overarching empire, like the Roman Empire, right? Rome took over a bunch of different places and had a bunch of different nationalities underneath it, right? But it was all Rome at the end of the day, right? You could be from Germania,
Right.
you could be from Britain, Britannia, you could be from North Africa, you know what I'm saying? Right? But it was Rome, you feel me? That's the concept of being Moorish as part of an empire, right? It was the fact, like again, the brother from Gambia could claim being part of the Moroccan Empire, even though Morocco was a smaller landmass. The concept of being an empire is I can be a satellite, I can be a colony from that empire. You feel what I'm saying? I can be whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
it was the concept of being able to say, hey, this name Moorish, right, is a name to where it encompasses a big enough umbrella to where we can all be whatever we are underneath that. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Right.
so it's not that a lot of like the way Seti packages it. He's like you're becoming like some Arab convert, and anybody who's been had personal experience with the temple knows that it's nothing further from the truth, right? They don't try to make you some Arab convert. In fact, it's the most pro-African situation, like in terms of getting knowledge of self, you're gonna get, right. In fact, it's the foundation of that concept in the Americas, right? You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of terminology that we use in modern day, like the concept knowledge of self. People wouldn't be saying knowledge of self if it wasn't for the Moorish Science Temple of America, right? And the Nation of Islam, right? Which comes chronologically right after the Moorish Science Temple of America, right? So a lot of the terminology people use that Seti even employs, right? You can't honestly say that you got it from any place other than these people, right? But anyway, go ahead.
And I see that in his build. I'm gonna point out one discrepancy that I saw when he was building, and I believe it was about hold on, just a second page. He was saying let's see, more science. I think it was when he was talking about the Moabites, and I'm gonna have to find this one particular part. But basically, I can tell that sometimes he takes, and I can illustrate it with the part when he built on Jesus in reference to what it said in your thing. Now, because I have a perspective on Jesus, and I always felt like even before I got knowledge of self through the nation gods and earth, I never believed that Jesus was an actual person. I believe that it was more like a metaphor of a person Some people, when I was younger, coming up, Afrocentric brother my mother dated was telling us that he, from his understanding, it was a collection of different people who were all over the globe, but people who wrote the stories all wrote about him in the same way. And then I also, that's why he had different names all over the place. So everybody had these different understandings. And so that's kind of what not ran me away, but slowed me up in my studies when I hit the student enrollment in the Nation of Gods and Earth, which ran me into how did the white man come to be, which to me directly connects to the Bible. So since it connects to the Bible, it slows me up and making me feel apprehensive about accepting the information and the validity of the information. So I see how he would feel that way by seeing the word Jesus, but I did not get that the Moorish Science Temple or Noble Jew Ali, from what he was saying, was trying to be Christian-like or all, because we all know that Jesus in all of the three major religions and connected to all of them as a prophet. But I did understand the question of, if Jesus is a prophet that is mentioned in this book, and I think y'all connect, the Moorish Science Temple connect directly with Islam, then how do those two things square? You know what I'm saying? If Islam assumes, because he was talking about Islam being Muhammad being the prophet. So if I was coming from the outside in, especially at a younger age, that's probably a question I definitely would have asked.
Oh, so
like, what is that?
So if you follow Islam, how could Noble Drew Ali be a prophet if Muhammad is the last and final messenger? Is that what you're saying?
Right. That's the point he had made. And then the fact that he would connect or make Jesus prominent, when I'm telling you that, from my understanding, I was under the impression that he wasn't even a real person. And the brother who broke it down, the Mossad who broke it down to me, and that was important. He broke it down as if Noble Drew Ali wasn't saying that he was a real person, because he actually read something that spoke to that, where he didn't say he was a real person. He was implying that if he was, that it would be like a good example of a good person.
I would say that brother never actually read the literature full all the way through, and if he did, he might have rushed through it. So right off the top, it makes a metaphorical concept and it makes a literal concept.
Right.
It makes both.
Okay.
So when in the questionnaire, right, there's ask the question, where do we get the name Jesus? We get the name, we get it from the East. The next question is, what does the name Jesus mean? Jesus means justice, right? So there's a metaphorical concept to it, right? But there is a literal concept, right? So yes, it does link up with Islam and it does link up with the rest of the Abrahamic traditions, right? So Prophet Noble Drew Ali stipulates in the literature that it is the 18 missing years from the life of Jesus that's missing from the holy, from what he would say is our holy Bible, right? And then also he makes the claim that it is the uniting of the Quran of Mecca. So he's basically making the claim that because it's the 18 missing years of Jesus, it's like another form of a gospel, right? So it's the completing of what the Quran of Mecca would call the Injil, or the Gospels, basically.
Right.
So, but in the literature, no, it does make the claim that Jesus was a real person. So in the questionnaire it says, give in brief what is the line and genealogy of Jesus. The line and genealogy of Jesus. Fake people don't have genes, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, so literally asking, so
biological genes.
Go ahead.
You mean biological genes? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I remember, because he was making a connection that there was, well, how was Jesus in India and all these other places, because they had no planes. So that really, I mean, people walk, they rode horses,
it's called the Silk Road,
so I didn't understand that.
It's called the Silk Road.
that kind of threw me off. I was like, maybe he joking, but it seemed like he was serious, because he said it several times. So it's problematic when you I guess showboat too much, and then people will start taking those things that you say serious. Because I was really trying to understand what his perspective was, but the Jesus thing, I remember it. He was saying Jesus didn't go because Jesus was on the cross at 33, which gave me the impression that he was under the understanding that those missing years was in his later. When I was under the impression those were in his early years. before, because when he came back and came across, that's when he had already made those pilgrimage. Am I correct? Because that's what I heard when I read up on it. So I think that is missing time. It would match up. He could have made those pilgrimage and hit all those places. But like I said, I was under the impression that if he was a real person, that maybe it wasn't an individual person. Maybe these were bits and stories of just people doing positive things all over the world with under the similar perspective.
Right. So from 12 to 30, the Bible jumps. Like Jesus goes from 12 to
Right.
30, then he has 3 years of teaching. So
Right. Right.
so these are the 18, like so the claim from the Moorish Science Temple of America is that that what Noble Drew Ali brought is the 18 missing years of Jesus, and
Right.
it's the uniting of the Quran of Mecca, i.e., it's the Injil, right? So a lot of people in Islam would say that the Gospels have been corrupted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of Christians would say in return, well, where's your Injil? And they're like, they don't have one, right? They don't have an uncorrupted
Mm-hmm.
gospel, right? Well, if you believe in prophethood, right? Um, and you believe in the Abrahamic concept of prophet, and this goes into your concept of Muhammad being a prophet and how this works with Islam, right? So so in the Quran and in the Bible, it stipulates that basically everybody gets a prophet speaking their own language. Okay, the Quran
Okay.
specifically says that
Okay.
every nation gets a prophet speaking their own language. Every nation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it also when it talks about Muhammad being the last and final messenger, it never says last and final messenger. If you go to any Muslim and you say, "Is Muhammad the seal of the prophets?" They'll say yes. Is Muhammad the last and final messenger? They'll say yes. Well, how do you say that? And they'll say it the same way in Arabic. Khatam and Nabi'in, right? Khatam and Nabi'in, right? So the word Khatam is the word that they say for last, is that they're saying meaning is that it's the last and final messenger, right? Now there's dispute upon that, right? What everyone will agree on is that it means the word seal, right? Like if you've ever seen an old school like a medieval type flick where they're writing a letter, right? They'll put like some rubber, they'll rubber stamp it, they'll burn the rubber on that joint, they'll hit it with the ring and stamp that joint, right? They put the seal on that joint, right? It's the seal of approval,
Mm-hmm.
seal of authentication. You know that when you see that seal, it comes from that person, right? And that person alone, because they're the only person that has that ring, right? Or that seal, right? So the actual concept from the Quran is that Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, the authenticator of the prophets, right? So you can authenticate any prophet that comes via what he said, via what he did, right? So it never makes the claim that there won't be another one after him, right? Again, it uses the word khatam. There's a specific word for last and final in Arabic, specific word. It's akhir, akhir, right? And in fact, this is one of the sacred names of Allah, al-akhir, the last, right? Like, like the beginning and the end, the alpha and omega, in Arabic they have the name. He's the beginning, but he's the first. He's the last, right? In the same concept, like
Mm-hmm.
so the word akhir or al akhir or akhir is not the same as khatam, nor does it even look alike, right? So there's a specific word when
Mm-hmm.
you want to say when you want to stamp something as the last of something, right? However, that was not the word used. They used the word for seal and authentication, right? And
Okay.
again, via the Quran, every nation gets a prophet and a messenger speaking their language. So unless you're saying that there was never any nation created after Muhammad, I don't know how you roll with that, because we can obviously see historical nations that were created after Muhammad. There was multiple nations created in the Middle East after Muhammad. You see what I'm saying? Like different the same
Right.
geographic locations, but different nations have popping off. In Africa, there was different nations. I mean, we can look at the South Sudan, all that right now. America wasn't around as a nation back then. You feel me? So
Yeah.
the Quran would stipulate that every nation popping up for eternity. There's also a verse that says we are forever sending messages, right? Or perpetually sending messages, or
Mm-hmm.
ever sending messages, right? So unless the Muslims prepared to say that the Quran is contradicting itself and every nation getting a messenger, um, you can't clear that up unless you're saying Hatam means what it means, seal and approval, right? Does that clear it up or no? Oh, you froze on me, brother. All right, so I'm freestyling from here. Uh, so here's something I really want to get to the people. Okay. So the brothers asked me about Jesus and was Jesus real, etc. Yeah, you do in Islam, this, that, and the third, right? That's beautiful questions to.
My bad. Did you know I was?
No, you good. Oh, hold on. I got to bring it back in on camera, fam. Hold on. Just gonna bring him in. Is it gonna bring him in? There you go. He's coming back.
All right, my bad. My my daughter is taking her boyfriend to the airport, and she was calling me, and I had to do something. And
Hey,
it interrupted.
no apologies, man.
But
You gotta be first, man.
cool. All right. So I missed some of it. Try to go back a little bit. I don't remember where I left off at either.
You know what? I'm gonna pick up on a point I was just gonna make, right? Like, so you were asking me about Islam and Jesus, and about I finished out the whole point on the seal and whatnot, right?
Okay, remember
So
that. I remember.
the people got that right, but like, so you're asking me about Islam and Christianity, this and the third, right? And this is the part that's intriguing to me, right? So this is where I'm gonna push back on Seti real quick, right? So the whole time Seti's talking about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, right? And the Moors don't follow the teachings of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, right? And so here's the funny thing: the Moors in their literature, in their last chapter, they claim Marcus Mosiah Garvey to be a prophet of theirs, right? He's the forerunner to Noble Drew Ali, right? The forerunner, right? And he stirred the nations up, getting ready for the prophet, right? And they made the claim that he said that he called for a prophet, right? So, so I just want to read something real quick. Okay. So in a book called Race First, written in the 70s, right? This is about hold on. Race First, the ideological and organizational struggles of Marcus Garvey. Okay. Written by Tony Martin. Chapter 4. Okay. This is from a this is from something that Marcus Garvey wrote in Champion magazine in 1917, a Chicago-based magazine, right, where Noble Drew Ali and all them was doing their thing, right. Noble Drew Ali being in the States in 1913 in Newark, New Jersey, operating. He writes, "This is Marcus Garvey. This is Marcus Garvey. The Negro is crying for a Muhammad, a prophet to come forth and give him the Quran of economic and intellectual welfare. Where is he?" So factually, I'm gonna read it one more time, family. One more time. This is Marcus Garvey in 1917 in the Champion magazine. Okay, I'm giving you the names, the dates, all that. Yeah, March 1917. I can't give you one more, right? The Negro is crying for a Muhammad, a prophet to come forth and give him the Quran of economic and intellectual welfare. Where is he? So bottom line is the Moors, when they claim him as a prophet and say that he was calling for a prophet, right? Right off the top, their claim is correct, right? But at the same point in time, he said that the prophet he was calling for should bring forth a Quran of economic and intellectual welfare, right? And so Noble Drew Ali brought forth the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Now, real quick, Seti makes a he tries to say, well, spelling it Coran, Koran, that's a cut. That's a cut. That's a cut. Well, in this article in 1917, Coran is how Marcus Garvey spelled it. So are you going against the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey?
Yeah.
He also said calling people Muslim with an O, Moslem, was a cut. Well, I hate to break you, but every time Marcus Garvey wrote that down and spoke it in his, he is Moslem. Every single time. Do you know why? Because that was the common usage in the West, right? In the West for those words. The scholars of the time were using Muslim and using Quran, right? With the K. It wasn't a cut on anybody. And if you want to produce any evidence stating otherwise, please do so. Because Marcus Mosiah Garvey disagrees with you. Yeah, disagrees
Wow.
with you on that. But I gotta jump into another one, right? So
Go
right
for
off
it.
the top, Marcus Garvey wasn't anti-Jesus. He was an anti-Islam. In fact, he was taught by a Muslim, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
his organization, the UNIA, was 75% Muslim, right?
Mm.
Wrap your mind around that one when it was popping off, right? In fact, it was this close to becoming an Islamic organization, and they had a very large meeting to where they discussed becoming an Islamic organization because or no, excuse me, not 75% of the UNIA, but 75% of the African descent world, excuse me, was Muslim at the time, right? So they were saying we're better Christians than the Christians over in the West anyway. We might as well be Muslims. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? For 2 days they mulled the idea over, right? And Marcus Garvey said, who was a Christian himself, he had no problem with Jesus. He wasn't saying Jesus was Serapis. Marcus Garvey
Mm-hmm.
not at one time said Jesus was Serapis. So I'm just saying, why
Mm-hmm.
are you rocking this flag if you're talking about his God like that? I don't understand that. Why anyway, I'll leave that one to the side, right? Leave that one to the side, right? But again, Marcus Mosiah Garvey was like, you know what we're gonna do with the UNIA? We're not going to make it any religion in particular. We're going to be like one name, one God, one destiny, right? But we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
interfaith with it, and we're going to have interfaith dialogues and try to build bridges, much like what you and I are talking about right now, right? He wasn't
Right.
saying he didn't say draw any line in the sand between groups. He didn't say tell Muslims that they were. You know what he said about Muhammad? He routinely would talk about Muhammad being a black man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad bin, who was a reformer, who was someone to be admired and revered, and someone to emulate, right? And hold on, what did he say? He said he swept the Asiatic world with that new cult, right? He swept the Asiatic world again. Seti talking about that word Asiatic, tick tick tick.
Yeah.
Again, your boy Marcus Garvey was saying Asiatic,
That's
right?
it. That you just made me think of the point that I was making, and I think he was wrong because I'm pretty sure because when he read the definition of Asiatic, he read it with the TIC, and I have it up. That's why I know it is. He says, and I just know that he heard something. Sometimes you hear something in the definition that you misinterpret, and I think it's a text, like past tense problem.
A suffix,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, but he was saying, come on, Tick. TIC, Asiatic. Oh, yeah. He was saying that it was Greek. That was Greek. And the way they worded it, and here it comes, it's coming up. It says, let me go down because it's down here. All right. So suffix equivalent in the meaning to or occurring in adjectives of Greek origin. So he read it just like that, as if when it said occurring in adjectives of Greek origin, that meant that it only occurs in adjectives of Greek origin. And I was like, I wonder is he hearing that? Because sometimes when you get them, really ramped up emotionally, you don't realize that that's what you know what I'm saying? Because I know that's probably how it sounded to him. They're like, see, Greek origin. And I was like, it's just implying that they use that suffix too. So yeah, that's the only point that I just saw that part. So I was wondering, I was like, he really up there because that's what I was like, well, hold on, that connects to what my understanding is Asiatic, and then I thought about the brother, the Moore Science brother who was building with Pharaoh about the same point. He made those very points. He talked about what you just talked about, but he didn't do it. He let another Muslim do it. Actual Arab Muslim who broke it down to, and he wasn't breaking it down to anybody else, but other Arabs, explaining to them that the Prophet Muhammad was not the last prophet, that there will be many prophets, and that all prophets will come in form. And he broke it down even deeper, not in the mental concept, but he broke it down deeper than saying nationality. He said, even if you're in the same country, but you speak the language with a different slang, he had to bring a prophet in that way. So if we Black and Afrocentric in America, then that would mean that somebody like Noble Drew Ali, who would speak our language, as opposed to, say, Orthodox Muslim, would have to come over because we wouldn't probably vibe with him. So I got that point. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, just for any Orthodox Muslim who's listening in real quick, and
Yeah.
you're saying, no, that can't be. Again, so is Jesus coming back in your religion or no? Because that's another prophet after Muhammad. And understand the Quran says that when he's coming back, he has to affirm certain things. So he's being a prophet when he comes back. He's saying, no, I never claimed to be God. No, I never claimed this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. He's affirming things as a prophet, right? So Jesus comes back again in Islam. So if there's no other prophet after Muhammad, Jesus don't even get to come back. I don't know what book you read.
Right. That's true. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's true. That's true. So to me, the whole argument a lot of times is about perspective and maybe the way you read information or what particular book you're getting your information from. And I think to me, sometimes when you, like, I do this a lot, like I'll say, well, let's look up the word. Mm-hmm. And just looking up the word does not always prove somebody right or wrong, because they may be talking about a cultural definition as opposed to the actual definition. And that's the difference I'm seeing here a lot. With Seti and them is saying, they reading a passage and saying, boom, I got you. And they playing got you in that sense. And they saying that a lot on CNN, playing got you, which means you looking to catch a motherfucker wrong as opposed to reading the information and just trying to find truth, not to disprove it, but you're just looking for truth. So you read all information to find truth. And I think he said that, but you can't go to this. That's the whole concept of what is exposing motherfucker, like as if he was trying to lie. It is absolutely possible that Noble Drew Ali had all good intentions and could just been wrong. But that don't mean he was sinister and out to, manipulate minds and shit. And then if everybody up until this point was following his teachings, they are not cruddy or consciously being evil or wrong and trying to mislead people. They are following information that they found to be truthful to them. That's the point. That's another point that I dislike, because you're not going to connect with people. And if you think that you're going to make it with your nation alone, it's not going to work.
Right. Real quick, there's 2 points I want to make. My phone's dying.
Go for it.
So you made that point about cultural definitions, right? So Seti reads this line: white means purity, purity means God, God means ruler of the land, and is expecting everybody to flip out over that, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's the actual cultural meaning of it, right? What's the actual cultural meaning of that? It's a caste system that we created. Right. It originates with us. If we're the original people on the planet, right, and we built everything first, we did the first everything, understand we're the first people to create a caste system. Understand, right? And so this whole white at the top, black at the bottom, right? Now it's not, again, it's never skin tone. With us, it was definitely not skin tone, right? It had to do with what your function was in the society, right? You know what I'm saying? But white was always the top of it, and the black was always at the bottom of it, right? Yeah. So you can go from India to West Africa right now and see this whole thing. So the Tuareg, right? Very African people, right? Dark skin, all that, right? They get that. Man, all North Africa, West Africa, they call themselves the rulers of their group call themselves white. You know what I'm saying? And the lower class people black. No matter how light or dark they are, does not matter, right? It's a caste system. With the brother I mentioned, Abdul Rahman Ibrahim Ibn Sari, right? His father, when he came to power, he was a Fulani man. Okay, the Fulani are not, they're dark, a lot darker than me. You feel me? So the Fulani, like when his father came into power, again, this is the 1800s. This is the West Africa, the Gambia, right? Right? In the midst of people getting enslaved, right? This is our stuff, right? When his father came to power, they gave him in the ceremony the white turban of office, white symbolizing his high status of office. It has nothing to do with skin tone, right?
Yeah, that's a cultural definition that he's living under himself. It's a Western cultural definition.
Right. And it wasn't the original one either. Oh, my brother froze out on me again. I think somebody called him or whatnot. What was my last point that I wanted to make? Oh, what was it? Oh, this is what I wanted to talk about real quick, family. So when it comes to Egypt, Not only was Noble Drew Ali, when he came on the scene, he was introduced to himself as the Egyptian native student. He had an Egyptian teacher, right? He had an Egyptian teacher, right? So he had the same teacher or I'm surmising he had the same teacher. Most Moors will tell you he had the same teacher that helped Marcus Mosiah Garvey start the UNIA. His name is Deuce Muhammad Ali. Deuce Muhammad Ali. He was a man of Egyptian Sudanese descent who went around the world starting a bunch of Pan-African and Islamic organizations. Um, uh, and went around the world acting out different characters from Shakespeare who happened to be Moors, right? He would go out and give public shows where he would act out different scenes from different characters of the Shakespeare plays and whatnot. Let me try one more time. I'm gonna try to add you in another way, bro. I'll try like this. Trying to add my brother Debunk back in. No, it won't let me invite you more than once, bro. Try to do it one more time. Ask to come on real quick. Send me a request if you want to come back in. But anyway, family. So again, an Egyptian Muslim was teaching Marcus Mosiah Garvey how to build his organization, right? Write articles, get involved in newspapers and whatnot. Deuce Muhammad Ali was involved in all this stuff, right? And so when you get into the literature, right? So understand how Egyptian centric this is. There's a title of a chapter in this book called Egypt, the Capital Empire of the Dominion of Africa. Understand, Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. And then goes on to stipulate the fact that the Egyptian pharaohs gave the Moors permission to live in their land, right? To live in their land, right? Or a portion of Egypt, right? And that portion of Egypt extending all the way over to the Americas. Again, we see the Egyptian artifacts over here, right? So not only does he say that he's an Egyptian student and that Egypt is the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa and that we're living in a portion of Egypt and that the Moors subserviently were given permission to live here via the Egyptian pharaohs, right? He breaks down the fact that Jesus is of an African descent, right? And that Jesus is educated in Egyptian schools, right? And goes through the Egyptian mystery schools and gets initiated through the Egyptian mystery schools. That John the Baptist gets initiated through the Egyptian mystery schools, right? Not only that, he breaks. So look at this. He gives you Egyptian practices, right? So look at the Nation of Islam and at the student enrollment, and look at the Moorish Science Temple of America. Their questionnaires, right? Their question and answer. There's a questioner and an answer, and someone giving the answer, right? And they give you the question and the answer to begin with. Where does this come from? It just so happens that this is the style of teaching from the Egyptian mystery systems or from the Egyptian schools of thought. This goes back to Imhotep and whatnot. This whole question-answer concept, question-answer. Anybody who's familiar with the Kemetic literature knows what I'm talking about. Knows exactly what I'm talking about. Knows exactly what I'm talking about. The question-answer concept from any kind of adept or initiatory system. You feel me? So what else? What else? What else? What else? What else? What about it? What else about Egypt can I talk about? He talks about the pharaohs dredging the river Nile. He talks about the pharaohs dredging the Niger River. You feel me? And establishing trade all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. You feel me? He talks about the origin of the Egyptians and where they come from, right? But nowhere does he say a negative thing about the Egyptians, and only puts them in the place of primacy. Even in the Moorish concept, the Moroccan Empire is subservient to the Egyptian. The Egyptians give them a place to stay. The Egyptians give them a place to stay. That 5-point star, by the way, that 5-pointed star. Where's the first place we see this 5-pointed star symbolized like this, right? Well, we see it in Canaan. We can see Moabite seals with the 5-pointed star in it. That's not hard to show. There's Moabite seals with that on it, right? But what's the symbol of a Seba? What's the symbol of a teacher in Egypt? It's a 5-pointed star. 5-pointed star. And I don't know if I have enough time before my phone dies. But the word more goes back to a Canaanite word that means teacher or teachings. It goes back to a Canaanite word more. And even with that pronunciation, I'm gonna completely build on this in a whole nother build because I don't think my phone has enough time for it, right? But the concept of in a scholarly circle, someone will ask you, what are your cultural mores? What are your mores? What is your cultural teachings is what they're asking you. That concept of mores, moralities, teachings, goes back to a symbol, a 5-pointed star in Egypt. A 5-pointed star. You don't got to take my word for it. Anybody can go check out an Egyptian hieroglyphic dictionary and see the word Seba in many different formats and see that 5-pointed star and everything having to do with the teacher or the initiatory system, period, is wrapped up with that 5-pointed star. I implore. So here's the whole point, family. Is it? And my brother had to dip out, and I'm gonna do a part 2 on this build, and go point for point on a whole bunch of stuff. Because right now he wanted to ask me some questions on stuff. Right. The next build, I'm going point for point on Seti. Right. Because I watched the videos myself and I made my own little notes on it. Right. And again, this is just for the family, just to get the correct information out there. Right. Because again, the point is the way Seti's talking about things is, if you're of a Kemetic background, you should, or if you're of a Kemetic background, that you should distance yourself from the Moors, and you should distance yourself from anybody who's practicing Christianity, being a Hebrew Israelite, the Wabians, I'm assuming, anything, right? Anything other than the Kemetic stuff, right? And embrace an intriguing blend of feminism, atheism, and Kemeticism, right? Well, what we're saying is that's not going to be beneficial. We agree with Marcus Garvey, right? Me and my brother Sergeant Debunk, we agree with Marcus Garvey that we're going to build by having interfaith dialogue and moving forward. And you can already see that there's never been a Pan-African organization as large as Marcus Garvey's was, right? And he had this interfaith concept, right, of not dividing each other, right? Again, Seti's claiming to follow Garvey. Seti's claiming, he's saying, hey, man, he's trying to put the stake in the ground. He's our guy. We don't follow a prophet, he says, but he's our guy, right? But he's not following in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing that he's saying that's actually agreeing with it. He's in everything, like in ridiculing the word Asiatic, or ridiculing the word Quran or Quran, right? Ridiculing the word Muslim. He's ridiculing Marcus Garvey, right? I mean, in ridiculing the religions in general, he's ridiculing Marcus Garvey even further, and then ridiculing and being as divisive as he is completely antithetical to the concepts that Marcus Garvey was working with. He was saying, no, we need to be interfaith. We need to be interfaith. So if you think that the red, black, and green flag, right, means anything other than being the interfaith concept, right, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. And let's go back to this, right? Did Marcus Garvey ever sue the Moorish Science Temple of America for them using his name in their literature? Not one single time. In fact, there's documentation that Drew Ali actually met with Marcus Garvey when he was in prison in the States before he went back to Jamaica. My phone's about to die. And with that, family, I say peace and love. We'll pick up this build on a whole, maybe tomorrow.